Welcome, everybody. I'm Taney Roniger, and today I'll be speaking with Anna Patalano about the question of success in art, how we define success. We're particularly interested in how we artists might change the way we've traditionally thought about that. So I'm very interested in what Anna has to say. Oh, first, let me introduce you. Anna Patalano holds an MFA from Yale University School of Art, my alma mater as well, and a BFA from Tyler School of Art. She has over 40 years of experience as a working artist and educator, including a Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture residency and tenure as Associate Professor of Painting at the University of Texas in El Paso. She is currently Managing Director of the Greenwich Art Society in Greenwich, Connecticut, and co-director of its studio school. Anna is set to launch Art and Anarchy, a space for all artists working outside algorithms and institutions. And I'm dying to hear about that. That may have to be a different conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Anna, in advance of our conversation today, I did a little research looking into how contemporary artists define success, because we all have our own ideas, really, of what it means to be a successful artist. First, I'll say, the obvious, the gold standard, what everybody wants. They start out wanting. This is the big one. You're successful if you have gallery representation, if your work's shown in museums, if it's collected by museums, if you live off your work, if you sell it for big money, if you get written about in art magazines and get reviewed in major newspapers, if you're sought out to give lectures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? That used to be the way. That was what everybody wanted. Here's some other ways of thinking about it. These are common refrains that I picked up on in doing this research. Okay, you're successful if you get to do what you love every day. All right? Successful artists are those that remain true to their vision, right? This doesn't always happen. You're successful if your work gives you emotional fulfillment, recognition within the larger art world discourse. That came up a lot. You don't even have to be selling, making any money, but if you're part of that discourse, you can consider yourself successful. Living an authentic life outside conventional norms and expectations. That's a nice one. You know? If you're successful, if you're making work that connects you with others of like minds. And, I'm hearing this a lot today, you're successful if you have high visibility on social media. If you get a lot of likes and you have a big audience there. I will throw this in. I once, in my early 20s, I worked for an artist named Frank Gillette. And I asked him one day, Frank, how do you define success as an artist? And he said, not to be bitter. That was his whole definition, not to be bitter.
That's a good one.
I know, and I actually went, oh my God, I was kind of right. I have sort of my own take, which, you may or may not find interesting. I consider myself successful if my work is reaching beyond the art world itself. If it's sort of instigating dialogue in other fields, if I'm involved in, cross-disciplinary dialogues. It's really important to me these days to get my work outside, beyond the art world proper. So maybe that's something, that you've thought about it as well.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I have been thinking about this topic for a long time because, as an educator, as you know as well, since you also teach, and having been teaching for as long as I have seen the expectations change of my students as they go through like a particular program and how they perceive the sort of general, what they think of as the art world, the context that they understand it in and how they relate to it. And how these viewpoints have changed over the years. And then I look at that, and then I think about when I talk to friends who are my peers, who I've known for many years how their expectation and definition of success has changed over the years. And so now, of course, with social media and the accessibility that we have to see what other people are doing in different parts of the world, that has really changed one's concept of success. You
Hmm.
know, it's sort of like a piece of the puzzle, of a bigger puzzle,
Hmm.
but an important one. And I think that, we need to recognize it as such. I think that the sort of standard conventional um, expectations that artists have had for a long time about what it means to be successful, like even the idea of like going to an art school, graduate school, and then that's sort of like, and then you either strive for gallery representation, that's an expectation, or you find a way to earn a living while you support your art practice. And different people have done that in many different ways, obviously. But I really find that, and it could be that technology and social media has really kind of disrupted the sort of ladder concept or structure of like going from one thing, then you achieve the other and achieve the, like, so the gallery representation, and then that goes hand in hand with being, recognized, validated by a gatekeeper, which is the gallery system. And then that validation can lend itself to another form of validation, maybe through museums, through collectors, being written in publications that have some noteworthiness. Um, so, that kind of ladder effect, I think, is no longer viable, and it hasn't been for a long time. And I find it interesting when artists today um, kind of think that that's still viable, when really so many of the various gatekeepers are in the art worlds, because it really is plural. It's not just one art world.
Right.
We have a lot of overlap going on. So that, and we have to navigate as artists through all of these different overlaps. So it's I think it's very challenging, and I think we're in a position now as artists that we have an opportunity to define what we think is our own creative autonomy. Like, what is that? And how do we sustain that? And that presents its own challenges. It gives us an opportunity to be creative in how we do those things, because not everybody has opportunities like to make a living from their work, for example.
Maybe you mentioned art worlds, plural. Maybe you should say a little bit about what you mean by that, a little bit more.
Well, the institutions, for example, the museums and foundation that we apply for grants from, those kind of established institutions. That's one gatekeeper. Then we
Okay.
have the educational institutions, which is another form of gatekeeping. Then we have the gallery system, which is another form of gatekeeping. Then we have, I did say educational institutions. So, the valid, like if I'm teaching, like you're teaching, we're teaching for, you know, an institution of some kind. Then that affords its own validation in terms of what we're doing, so
Mhm.
that they become a gatekeeper in a way. Um, and then, of course, the digital platforms is another gatekeeper.
How
We don't
how is that a gatekeeper? Because they're so
because,
open.
because well, it's open, but it really isn't. As long as technology, as long as the platform is controlled by another entity outside of our own, like Meta, for example, which owns Facebook,
Mm.
Instagram, and whatever, that and the sort of changing structures of the algorithms that they decide on, we
Oh, I
don't.
see.
That
Right.
is a form of gatekeeping. So you and I could post all we want, our art, what we have to say, our political view, whatever we think about or are inspired by. But the bottom line is that we have very little control over that. And
So
it, and what
our content, the content that we put up on those forums or venues, that does not get curated, or but does it? So what we don't have control over, what I'm hearing you say, is who sees it.
Yeah, who sees it, but also how the algorithms control its visibility
That's what I mean. Yeah.
to the audience or
Right.
to the.
Right.
So we don't have any control over that either.
That I get. Yeah.
So in other words, if somebody like I've attended various marketing workshops, just sort of general marketing within in the digital age, because as in my position as director of the organization where I work, we are a nonprofit art center. We have to think of creative ways to market our teachers, our educational programs for adults and children. So we have to think of ways to do it, and that all involves marketing. And so, I've learned that, the more you like somebody's post, the more likes that person has, the algorithm picks that up and shows more of that person's posts.
Right.
Okay. So that person could be maybe not, maybe just sort of like an average person, or maybe their work isn't that good by
Right.
my standards, for example. But
Right.
because people keep liking it, the algorithm picks it up and shows more of that person's posts, and that content becomes more visible.
And also the people can, get smart about that and rig it so that they're getting these random likes. They put words about cats,
Yeah,
in their
yeah,
posts, for example. And so people will see it, and people could, for example, open up a bunch of different Facebook accounts under
yes,
false names. And then
yes,
so everybody, in their friend group likes their image, and then it gets sent around. Yeah.
right, right. So we could create all the content that we want, and there's a ton of content out there. But really, what the gatekeepers are doing, they're using that content in a way to accumulate more eyeballs on that content, so they can sell more advertising, so they can get more money
Right.
and richer and richer. It's all about the numbers for them.
Right. Right. Right.
Doesn't matter what the content is, it's all about the numbers. And so as artists, and it's very difficult. I think that the digital platform, I think, is a very difficult gatekeeper to overcome, because anybody could go on. I mean, it's free. You open up a Facebook account or an Instagram account, and everybody and their brother is out there. And it's very hard to sort of stand out, even
Yeah.
minimally, from the sea of people and content and
Well,
whatever.
you know how you can stand out. I mean, let's say you're an art. This is so cynical, but you're an artist, like we are, and you want a big audience. You want a lot of likes, because who knows? It might, lead to other things like curators seeing your work. So you could. Another way to rig the system is you're trying to get a lot of likes. You deliberately create like average work, just stuff that everybody likes, like
Yep.
colorful abstraction that's very mild and just pleasing, eye pleasing. And then you're the most popular, you're the most famous artist on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, and I see a lot of younger artists on Instagram, particularly women, unfortunately sexualize
Oh man.
themselves, and they hold the painting so that you don't see the front of the painting, and they're dressed in a way that's not provocative overtly, but they're young and they're pretty and they have a
Right.
decent body, right? So
Yeah.
like, and then they got the music going, and then they turn the painting around, and here's my painting, and they're cute. And
Yeah.
so they're looking at that as a visual, not just the painting. Oftentimes the painting is like no big deal. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe it's technically well done, but it's like, who cares? I've seen a million of these. You know what I mean? But so
Mhm.
so they're using themselves as the content as well, and purely on a visual basis. I have a friend who sends me. We have this running joke because he's like, he'll see reels on his feed or wherever on Instagram. And it's always these women that are really skimpily dressed,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like they're painting, like they're on the like spreading paint around, and they have hardly any clothes on. And he'll say to me, there it is again, like, what's going on? Well, we know what's going on. It's
Oh
it's
man.
it's another form of marketing.
I
And
see, I even see a lot of real artists, I'm sorry to say, but doing that as well. Like, the way to get the eyes on your work is to frequently post images of your face, especially if it's beautiful, you know?
Yeah,
Oh,
well, I'm just, I don't know. We live in a different time, and perception is everything. Perception has always been a thing, but now it's like really a thing, like the main thing. And it doesn't even matter what the person has to say or how smart they might be or any other level of communication that they may want to offer other than what they look like. That is lower on the list, lower on the list of why people want to engage. And of course, the nature of social media and the sort of endless scrolling, lack of attention span,
yeah.
2 seconds, I'm on to the next thing. I don't even like, if I post something, I try to keep it as short as possible because I don't even think people read
I
anything
know,
in a post,
sadly.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's a very limited audience, those who will read, for example, a multi-paragraph Facebook post.
Exactly, exactly.
But let's go back to this idea of, should we mention the article that you sent me recently? Was it Andrea Fraser?
Yes,
Do you want to mention that? Because I thought that was so interesting. Subfields within art.
yes, yes, we can certainly refer to that if you'd like.
Yeah, because so do you happen to have a list of them that she gives?
Yeah, yes, I do actually. So the subfields are the following. Um, Certainly the art market, meaning the for-profit sector of the art market, encompasses commercial art galleries, art fairs, and auctions.
Got it.
Okay. So that's one subfield where what the artists produce has monetary value because the goal is to sell. That's how they're going to make money. The art galleries have to make money through sales, art fairs and auctions, the same thing. So that value is associated to artistic value, and it's appraised value. That's a whole different way of like contextualizing one's art within that marketplace. Then the next subfield is exhibitions, where they are primarily within the public and nonprofit sectors of museums, galleries, biennials, and public art programs. That's the second field that she lists. So it's not just about the art in this case, but it's about also the experience of being in that space to view the art. So there's other value there. It's not monetary necessarily, unless somebody walks into a gallery and they see an artwork that they like and they want to buy it. But generally, gallery shows, biennials, public art programs are for the audience to come in and be engaged by the art. Museums certainly have had to figure out ways to get more bodies in the door. So they not only have art exhibitions, as you know, but they'll like create these experiences where people come in and they're, part of like this bigger thing that they feel gives them a particular experience they can't have anywhere else.
But then also the museums are starting to have like motorcycle exhibitions. And do
Yeah,
you remember that one?
yeah, yeah.
In
No, and
fashion, a lot of fashion
a lot of
exhibitions.
fashion, absolutely. So again, opening up that space to a broader audience, not just the people who want to look at paintings on a wall.
Mhm.
And I think museums have had to do that because with funding being cut, public funding through the government, museums it's been going on for a while now, but it's really bad now, as you know,
Mhm.
um, where they have to figure out other ways to make money to keep the doors
Yeah,
open.
yeah, yeah.
Then the next subfield is the academic field where, the educational institutions, which can include museums and other public and nonprofit art organizations, operate as educational institutions. So, and that's where you have an overlap between an academic institution and a museum potentially, because many museums have their own academic not academic in the sense that you earn a degree, but they offer classes,
Oh, right, yeah.
right? So like there's overlap there. We
Also, the university art galleries, which are
Yes,
not for profit, but are very reputable, many of them.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. The next subfield is community-based organizations like the one that I work at, which are nonprofit art centers, public art centers that are supported through grants residencies and other funding, which is
Right.
very hard nowadays. Private donation, like annual appeals to members and so forth, just
Right.
to fund the organization. So in this particular field, what the artists produce is not just the artwork, but a sense of community. Because within this smaller subfield, the people who want to be a part of whatever it is really want to be there because it's the community that's important to them. And I can tell you in the organization where I work, people want to be, they generally live within the geographic area. So they want to feel a part of a community where they can like look for resources, communicate with one another, visit one another's studios, take classes that they can sort of use as like, not only a learning ground, but also just develop friendships,
Hmm. Hmm.
through that
So
environment.
let's frame all of what you just said within, the question of success. So in your area, for example, do artists consider themselves successful if they're, members of this institution
I,
they run?
I think it depends on where they are in their careers, you know, in their own development. I think some of them view the community of the organization as like a springboard to something else. For example, I'll give you an example. This is a real example that has happened now within the last few years. Some of our members who have been making artwork for a long time, they've gotten into shows, they've even had gallery representation, and they want more gallery representation. And they want it in New York City because we're in Connecticut. They might have more visibility in Connecticut because of the location of the organization, but they want to do something in the city. So they apply to co-op galleries, which have become more important lately because of the sort of degradation of the conventional gallery system and how difficult it is to actually be represented by a gallery if you are a underrepresented artist where you're not in the blue chip level, you're not like, showing at David's Werner or wherever, uh, or even Miles McEnery, like they want to get their foot in the door someplace. And
Sure.
so the co-op galleries I have heard a lot of criticism of co-op galleries because often if they accept the artist into their stable, the artist has to pay something to be there.
Hmm.
And the people that I know who have done this, because they maybe have the resources, they can do it. They can pay whatever it is and be a part of that scene where they know they're going to get a solo show every couple of years. They're going to be involved in group shows. It's a different sense of community. It's their own. It's kind of a microcosm within a bigger world. But they have that commonality with other artists who have a similar goal, and so they view that step as a success. They've been able to move out of a particular area geographically and have their work visible in another place, and
A place with more opportunities,
more
presumably.
opportunity, more of an audience,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a different kind of support maybe that we as an organization cannot offer to them. So it's good. It's good. I mean, if that's what they want to do, that's great. That's really great. So they look at that as success. Then we have other people they just want to have a place where they could come and do their work in a sort of a studio setting where they can interact with other people. They look at some of the classes as like think tanks, where they come in. It's not even so much about producing the final product. It's about the interaction, the collaborative thinking that goes on within that space. And that for them is like, if they could do that on a regular basis, that they think that's a success for them, because
Just
because
being part of this discourse, right?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. That their ideas are being heard, that they can get the feedback, they can learn how to think critically of not only their own work but other people's work. And they can take that experience and be able to assimilate within a bigger picture, like look at the rest of the art world or worlds and understand it on maybe a different level, you know.
And is that the end game for them? Or are they using this kind of success, which we're talking about, that just being a part of that community and part of that discourse? Are they kind of eyeing that as a stepping stone to the next Like being part of the discourse in New York City, which would be kind of considered higher, right?
Yeah. I think it depends on the person. I think some of them do use it as a stepping stone, and others don't. Others are just very happy
That's
to
the end in itself. Yeah.
like, to have that sense of community and a place that they can go. They get validation. They're heard. Their work is valued within that,
Yeah.
context, and that means a lot for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So are we done with the subfields or do you have more?
I think there's one. Hold on, there's one
Okay.
more. Oh, I love this one. Actually, the last subfield is cultural activism.
All right.
Okay, so this is interesting. This is where artists are really they're creating their own space, their own, either through a network or through their own idea of like what that structure will look like. It could be a physical space or a digital space. The goal of this, and actually why I have created Art and Anarchy, which we don't have to talk about today, is to have a space where artists who continue to do their work are outside of the sort of normal gatekeeper systems, either by choice or by inability to get in, and but they want a place where they can be heard, where their work is viewed maybe through a different lens, and not just in terms of like a retail, I'm going to sell this work, or I want the collector to buy the work. That they're doing work that maybe is not necessarily that is not the purpose of their work, that they're
Mhm.
doing work for other reasons. And it could be a form of cultural activism, where maybe their work is overtly political. Maybe it echoes, the changing social movements within our culture. So that
A
that
lot of
is a
environmental artists are kind of that way. They form their own
Yeah,
community.
exactly. So that is another that and then that's the last, actually, that's the last subfield that she mentions in her article. Um, you might want to, maybe when you post the recording, you might want to put the link to that article
Sure.
somewhere.
Yeah, particularly, if you read anything in that article, just read the first part and you can get a lot
Mhm.
out of that. Just identifying the subfields and recognizing that we today have an opportunity to redefine success for
Yes,
ourselves
right,
in terms of, when presented with this list of subfields, you're thinking, oh yeah, some of them aren't that important to me, you
right,
know? So pick the ones that are important and redefine success, in terms of those,
right. And
achieving those. So, for example, I don't know how you feel about being in museum collections. Is it really important for you to have your work in museum collections?
are you asking me
Yeah,
personally?
yeah, I'm asking you personally. Yeah.
You know what? At this time, not particularly.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
not per, I was part of a museum show several years ago. Um, it was a group show, it wasn't just my work, but it was part of a big museum show, and it was by invitation, and there was a specific theme to the show. And I thought, wow, this is kind of cool, to see my work in a museum. And it got, for the time, it got a lot of. It was not in New York City. It was actually at the Bruce Museum in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is a very fine museum. And so it's kind of cool to like see that.
I know.
But I have to say honestly, and I tell my students this all the time, and even my friends, who, I mean, when I think about my friends who are located in different parts of the country, some of them are located in large cities, some of them not so large cities, some of them are like really like nowhere to be found, like really just out in the sticks someplace. And when we talk about our various achievements or lack thereof, um, the bottom line, I think, is why did we get into doing this in the first place?
Right.
Like when I think back to, and granted, it was a different time. It was like ancient times. But I remember when I decided, it wasn't even a decision. It was like, just kind of like, I'm an artist. This is what I'm doing. Like the sort of like, just, it happens, you're making these things. And there wasn't any external, um, there wasn't any external goal really,
Mm.
except to put myself in a place where I could keep doing my work and learn and be in an environment with other people on my level. who were learning, where we could support one another and discover things either independently of one another or together. And it was just that. It was a way of tapping into some collective thought that reinforced one's identity as an artist.
So, by those criteria, which I love, do you feel like you're a successful artist?
I do.
Yes, you are.
I do. I mean, I have uh, I guess some street cred in terms of my credentials and what I've
Yeah.
achieved in my teaching career and my present, my job, present job or whatever.
Hmm.
But in terms of like going back to like why did I, you know, why am I doing this? It's funny when I left when I was leaving graduate school. I actually that summer that I graduated, in May of that year, and then I was asked to be a TA for the Yale Norfolk summer program for
Yeah.
undergraduates.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do it,
It
and
was
I
an honor. It's an honor to be
wanted to do
chosen.
something, and I wanted to sort of do something before I left to go for my, the job. And so at the same time that summer, I was in a group show with other graduate students at what was then Louis Mizell Gallery, New York City. And so I was like, I did that. I had to like, get work down there. And then I was getting ready to go to Norfolk for the thing for the TA. And after that summer, like when it was coming to a close and I knew I was getting ready to go out to the Southwest, I was invited to, have another show in the gallery, like later on. And I said to them, but I have this job offer. I'm going to go teach.
Yeah.
And they said, well, like, and this is back in the days where, if you live or you're working in one part of the country to like get work and ship it
Mhm.
to like, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this because I can't afford it. I mean,
Yeah.
now I have to start paying student loans once I start making money. And so I had to back out of that opportunity. But you know what? I have to tell you honestly, I couldn't get out of New York fast enough.
Yeah.
It's something inside of me said, do not get into that thing where there's going to be that expectation of you to do a certain kind of work when what you really want to do is you don't even know what you want to do, but you want that time and space to figure out how you're going to evolve as an artist. I felt like I was going to fall into a trap had I agreed.
Yeah.
I literally like fled New York. Sometimes I look back at that and I say, maybe that was a mistake. But you know what? Things happen the way they do.
And you
And
came back eventually.
well, I did, but not for the reason of like,
Right.
trying to be in a gallery in New York
Right.
City.
Right.
Once again, going back to why am I really doing
Hmm.
this?
Hmm. Hmm.
And the reasons are sometimes very difficult to articulate, but it's like the sort of thing that you have to do. And artists are artists because they kind of can't help themselves.
I think you just identified the question that we should really be talking about, which
Yeah,
is why do artists do what they do?
right, right.
Because that's is the invisible understructure of the question we are talking about, which is how do you define success? Well, it depends on why you got into this in the first place. What's in it for you? And I actually think very few of us think about that quite enough.
I think
Because the model that we've inherited, that there's this vertical system, what you've called the ladder. You get your first show, and then you get your first real gallery show, and then maybe a group show in New York City, and these are all milestones, right? And then you get at some point, oh my God, my first sale or collection. So what is the end point of that? It's interesting. It's all relative, right? So
yes,
I have a colleague of mine who I went to Yale with. I won't say her name, but so she did so well, like right out of grad school, and she was like showing at Mary Boone, when Mary Boone was, the top of the mountain. And I remember she was so disappointed. She felt like such a failure one year when she wasn't chosen for the Whitney Biennial. And the rest of us were like, oh my God, cry me a river, right? So it's all relative. So for her, what if she had been selected for the Whitney Biennial? What's higher than that? It's always,
yes.
you know,
Again, these are the constructs that have been built into our system, which I argue are no longer viable.
Yes.
No longer viable, particularly when we look at the economic disparity within our general social structure between the very wealthy and everybody else. And that gap continues to widen and widen and widen. We as artists, we need to go back. I think we have to look back, look over our shoulders, and say, examine, re-examine, why really did we get into this? Why? What was the meaning of that, and how has that changed over the years? And I think that that's a very important lesson, and one that can, if you can really understand it, could either continue to sustain you regardless of the ups and downs, regardless of the whether or not you want to be in the gatekeeper, a certain gatekeeper model or not. Some artists really want to be part of, like, whatever, the gallery scene or whatever, but some of us don't. Some of us don't want to be a part of that.
And
So
then the assumption is, from the outside, those who don't want to be a part of it, other people assume, well, it's just that we have not been able to achieve it,
no,
right?
it's
And so that's another kind of pressure, my image, right?
yeah, yes, certainly, and people make that, if they make that judgment, in my opinion, they don't know the artists. You cannot make a blanket judgment like that. You have to know the person. Maybe there are some people who just haven't been able to achieve those milestones. And no matter how much they've tried, they may be very sincere in their efforts, and maybe they have really good work, but they just haven't been able to
Yeah.
get there. That doesn't make them, in my opinion, a less successful artist.
A lot of it is luck.
I
I mean,
know, I
you
know,
know?
sure. Luck and being in the right place, knowing the right people. It's been like that forever, but there are people who just aren't that lucky.
Yeah.
Does that disqualify them as being either a good artist or an unsuccessful or a successful artist? I don't think so.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think we have to look at the person, look at their work, understand where they're coming from, and who are we to judge? Really,
Right.
like,
Right.
I'm not gonna. I mean, I know what I like. I know what art I like. I know
Yeah.
what I like, but I also want to know. My curiosity is, who is the artist? What about them? What can I learn from them? Maybe I'll look at their work differently if I understand better where they're coming from. So I'm not just making a superficial judgment.
Right. 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 Yeah. Let's go back, and we can jump back to that. But I want to talk a little bit about more about how things are different today, how things are changing. The subtitle of this little conversation was, redefining success in a rapidly changing world. So one thing that I've noticed, I'm sure you can corroborate this, is a lot of those middle tier galleries are closing.
Yes,
The blue chip galleries don't seem to be affected by anything,
that's right.
and then a lot of the middle tier galleries are going under, and then we're seeing more of like really like DIY stuff, pop-up shows, stuff like that. What would you add to that? How are things changing today?
Well, I think that sort of changing what we think of as the traditional gallery model, in that zone in between the blue chip and, like, and maybe, let's say, the co-op run art galleries,
Yeah.
and then the do-it-yourself, like, wherever I can show my work, wherever, that middle zone has deteriorated because, like, once again, economic disparity, the cost of real estate, uh, you know, these galleries have to pay rent. If they're not making enough money, they can't pay rent, they can't keep the doors open. It's quite simple. It's all about the money. It's all about the economy. So that has to that right there has put us in the position of figuring out, if we want to show our work, how do we, what other venues can we seek out? Nonprofit art centers like our own have become very important in this scheme of things, because we do have space where we can offer an artist shows, and we do have shows of artists' work. So there are places within the community, if there are art centers that are nonprofits that have gallery spaces, that's a place where I think more artists are turning to have an opportunity to show.
Yeah, yeah. And so this just occurred to me, rather than that sort of vertical model that we talked about, with stepping stones to some, ill-defined mountain peak, a more lateral or
Yes,
horizontal model
yes, Right.
where we figure out what's important to us and what isn't equally
Mhm.
important, and then spread our reach. If being part of community discourse is the most important thing to you, being involved in a community where you can rigorously discuss work and ideas,
Sure.
then grow your community
Mhm.
and seek out opportunities to speak with people, maybe even to give talks.
Yes.
So it's a lateral model. Yeah.
Right. And in that article that we referenced earlier, she has a diagram in the article where the
Mm,
where the different categories and subcategories literally overlap one another. So that sort of like it's not a stacked system. It's like this
right.
lateral moving back and forth in and out of these various zones. So yeah, I think we have to recognize these. I really wish that more artists would like learn about this stuff because it really is important to understand like where we are right now. We're not in the way it was 30 or 40 years ago. It just is not viable anymore. And
Mhm.
and I think that we in redefining the idea of like what it means to be successful, there are there are ways which one can do that. We're talking about some of the ways here today. Um, Certainly, but what is very, very important to me for people to understand is that social media is such a part of our huge part of our lives. But I really think artists need to look at that as a tool that they can use and figure out a way to not restrict the audience, but really target a
Yeah.
more relevant audience so that it's not just the sort of like random put it out there and see what happens. One of the things that I learned in some of these marketing workshops that I've attended over the years is that the people who are very successful in other fields, not art, people who are deemed as successful marketers,
Ah,
and they make a ton of money doing whatever it is. They could be a coach of like whatever something, or they could be an author, or they can provide a different kind of service, but they all say the same thing. You find whatever your niche is, you define that audience, you find a way to only give them, point in their direction to get attention, not get rid of all the noise. That's not going
yeah.
to they're never going to buy anything from you. They don't really care what you have to say. Go to the people who care about what you're offering because there's something that a value that you can give them. And then you market to those people and they will pay you. Some of these people are like, I attended a workshop once. This woman was making like tons of money. Like, and I'm like, what are you doing? It was really, and I got what she was doing. She found something of value that she was offering, and she was able to create structure around it that she was offering to other people who wanted to buy it from her so they could have that interaction with her. And also they had a viable structure that they could follow that could help them achieve whatever it was that they wanted to achieve with her help.
Well, I think that a lot of artists are doing that on Instagram, especially. So certain artists that I know are really just, they know their people, they know their community. These are, but so it becomes more viable if your work sells for, let's say, under $5,000.
Right.
Because I think you said it. You don't really traffic in, super rich people. Um, that this is the conflict for me because I guess if I were willing to lower my prices and sell everything for under five and preferably like 1 or 2 thousand, I'm sure I'd have tons of buyers. Um, but I'm not sure. It's just really a conflict because if you have the opportunity to sell for way more,
Mhm.
right? Once you raise your prices and one thing sells for, let's say, $25,000, you can't lower because then it seems
Oh,
arbitrary.
right. Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. So one of the things I've learned from actually some of our members who sell their work successfully on their own, they don't have galleries, they don't sell their work for a low price. They're expensive, like 5,000 and above,
okay.
and they do it themselves. They do it themselves. They do all their own marketing. They don't have a gallery representing them. They use social media smartly. But the thing for them is that they become their own marketer, so to speak. And what they do is they tap people who they know, even if they know that those people can't really buy or afford what they sell. They put together. I'm giving away a tip, which I think is really like invaluable, and I think it could be discussed even further. I've even advised some of my own students to do this. The ones who complain, "Oh, I want to sell work." I was like, okay, you know people, right? You know friends, you have family. Do an email marketing campaign. Set yourself up so that you are emailing people who know who you are, and
Hmm.
just do like a monthly, if it's a newsletter, or I'm working on this, or I'm making a mess in my studio over here. I don't know what I'm doing. Whatever it is, whatever. It doesn't have to be even the finished product.
Hmm.
Build a relationship with the people who know who you are. And then at a certain point, say to them, these works are for sale. And if you know anybody who might be interested in buying, please pass my email along to them. You build a robust email list, and that's what you use to make your sales from. Now, sometimes things happen randomly and somebody on social media sees something, but there's so many fake people out there that say, "Oh, I
Yeah.
want to work," and nothing ever happens. And many of the people who I know in our membership have experienced that. "Oh, wow, somebody's like, they want to buy their wife one of my paintings, and they're going to mail me a check." And I'm like, "Yeah, right.
On.
Okay,
Yeah.
whatever." So I think developing the relationships around the people who already know who you
Yeah.
are is
Yeah.
really important. And if a person can discipline themselves to become that, to develop that marketing, sort of your own marketing campaign, and do it consistently, that works, because the people I know who do that sell their work regularly.
Yes. So how do you feel about artist newsletters? Because that could be, just exactly what
Yeah,
you're talking
I
about.
think I think artist newsletters easily done. You all you need is like Constant Contact or MailChimp or one of these email marketing. We use Constant Contact for our email marketing pieces when we have to put out our whatever our programs or exhibitions are. I think it's great as long as the emails, people you're emailing to have opted in. If they
Yes.
haven't opted in, I get emails from people I never opted in. But maybe I went to a show, or maybe they know who I am, or they got my email address off of, like, I don't know, one of my,
Yeah, I don't like that.
they just put me on their mailing list. I'm
Yeah, I
like,
don't like that.
I didn't ask
Yeah.
you to be on your mailing
Yeah, I'm
list.
not interested. Yeah.
I get them all the time. As I said, our mailing list that we have for the organization are all opted in email
Good,
addresses.
good, good. I like that.
Value when somebody says, "I really want to hear from that person or that organization," whatever it is. So I'm okay with artist newsletters. I think direct email marketing can be very powerful, but to people who want to hear from you, not
So
for.
yeah, 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 totally get that point. So let me just jump back for a second. So it used to be that the idea was, we talked about the verticality, but we didn't talk about the resume per se, building your resume. The idea being that your work isn't even going to be, saleable. Nobody even really wants to look at it unless they see that on your resume you've achieved this, that, and the other. So now I think that's just blown apart. That model's
That's,
blown apart.
yeah. Again, that's a component of a paradigm that no longer is
Well, it
viable.
does exist. It does.
For certain things, certainly for educators, it's important. I think that if you're like applying to a job that requires that they see a certain level of experience,
Yeah.
either as a curator, either as a director of an art program, either as a founder of a particular kind of curriculum or something. Yes, that stuff is important to see on a resume, absolutely. But in terms of making one viable, in terms of your work being saleable,
Hmm.
I don't think it matters.
Well, I think it might be more accurate to say it exists, but it's not the only model by any means. But because, I mean, I have students who, they reach fourth year, they're really ambitious, they're trying to build their resume, right? Um, they don't know of any other way. And I'm a big, big fan of DIY stuff. You know, I mean, I've had solo shows where I've just rented the place out, just want to show my work. I'm not, I don't need a line on my resume. I want to show my work. I want to have an event. I want to maybe give a talk, make it an event. But I pay for everything. I do all the advertising. I'm a big, big fan of that.
Right. And I think that if one can do that, that if they have the resources to do that, that's great. that's great. If one doesn't and they have to collaborate or co-opt with another group
Yeah,
within a group of artists,
great.
everybody chips in some
Yeah.
money to go someplace. And that's what the co-op galleries are. Everybody chips in something to be a part of the gallery so that not one person is bearing the entire expense, and they have shows on a regular basis. I'm a big fan of co-op galleries. I think that if they're lucky enough to have a space in a good location and they have good management and they have good reach, marketing reach, where they have good mailing lists and they put the word out and people know who they are. I think it's a really nice opportunity for artists to get involved in something like that.
No, I
Because
agree. Yeah.
some people who I know, I mean, they can't foot the bill on their own, so
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
they have to have find other people like them who can chip in a little bit.
No, I get it. I get it. Yeah.
And what I don't like is when artists complain about that model, like, oh, well, why do I have to pay to be part of this gallery? I'm like, well, you know what? A lot of these people who work on their staff don't even get paid. They work as
Mhm,
volunteers. Why should anybody work for free for you?
mhm,
I don't get the whole entitlement thing that some
mhm.
artists, yes, I know we do the work. I know we put in all of the blood, sweat, and tears to do the work. I get that part. But if once you want to go out there in the world, it's, you know what? In some way it's a business like anything else. You want to put yourself out there, you want to get attention, you need a space, or you need whatever, you need marketing, you need the visibility. That's going to cost something. Nobody is going to do that. No one should do that for you for free, because you're not the end all be all. I'm sorry, there's many of us who are talented and feel like, oh well, we should get the attention too. You're gonna If you do it on a practical level, you understand the practicalities. If you have to pay something, then do that and make
Right.
it
Right, 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 right. No, it's an investment. I mean, I can't tell you how much money I've invested in my career. And that's when things happen, is when you are willing to make that investment. I mean,
right.
even if you're going to sell, I mean, even if you're going to have a show at a really nice gallery, I mean, who's going to get the work there? Who's going to, I mean, it's just a real time and
Right.
money investment, and something may not, maybe nothing will come of it, and maybe something will.
Exactly.
So that's what you got to
Exactly.
do.
You have to be willing to recognize again all the practical aspects of making even if it's not physical, even if it's a digital representation. Like you want to be part of an online gallery or something, or I mean, there's artsy. Uh, you have to be a gallery to, like, have visibility on artsy, and
Right,
that costs a certain amount of money by the gallery every month to be on artsy.
right.
But often they will pass some of that cost on to the artists, because some galleries can't afford to pay that every month, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And that I get. I get that too. So tell me what you think about Artsy. Are you on Artsy? And if so, what do you think about it? I have strong opinions.
I am not on arts. I personally am not, because I'm not in a gallery that would be on artsy. Um, we used artsy as an organization to represent, some of the artists who are within a certain show. I just feel, what I feel like artsy and so many other, like Saatchi Online and all these, there's just so much work.
Yeah.
It's again, it's too much to look at for me. And I
Yes.
think it's become such a glut of work that it's lost its impact for me.
Mm.
I don't
Yeah.
I I don't know anybody who has sold on Artsy.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, I haven't ever. Yeah. But I know people who have. I know artists who do regularly.
Okay, well
But
that's
again, Anna, their works are $1,000 or even 500.
right.
I mean, nobody's going to buy a $5,000 little, piece on Artsy,
The
sight
people
unseen.
the people who spend that kind of money, uh and that and more, want to see the work for real.
I hate the interface on Artsy. It just really offends me. It offends me in
Mhm.
every way. It's like we're creating little baubles, and they all got, hung up, just these little tiny little images all stacked together, and looks awful. I don't like that the prices are available, in the information. Just to me, it's offensive in that it's too similar to, say, Etsy, which is just all about selling little handmade trinkets. I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm sorry, but there's something special about art. There is.
yeah.
It's just, denudes it of the sacredness, you know?
I I agree, that's why you have to circle back to why am I doing this? What it,
Yeah.
why did I really get into this? And I mean, listen, some artists have to sell work because maybe they don't have another way to make money. And even if they sell a $500 painting regularly, that's something for them. You know
Yes.
what I mean? So like, once again, looking at the person's situation, where they're coming from, why, so I hear what you're saying and I don't disagree. And because again, technology has allowed anybody to sell anything to anybody anywhere in the world, makes it all easier to do, which is why I really do think that we're starting to circle back to people are looking for, especially now with AI, like people are circling back, I think, and I hope that this completes the circle, like come back to they want authentic interaction with real human beings. They want to have real conversations with people. They want face to face, they want a connection. They're looking for a connection that they cannot get through, like even like a Zoom talk. I hope to meet you one day, Tanny, in
That would be
person.
very, very, very
You
nice.
know what I mean? Because it's like an entirely different thing. Like I've talked to many people on Zoom, and I never met them. I have met
Yeah.
some. I've actually gotten friendly with some people I've met on Zoom, and then we become friends, and I see them in real life. But
It's very useful, all this sort of
sure,
mediating
yes,
technology, but it cannot be the end of anything. It has to be a means to an end, is what I think.
yes, I agree with you. Which is why I'm thinking that people are seeking more authentic
Yes.
interactions with other people, and I hope that continues, especially as AI becomes more pervasive in our world, that people will reject that as being the end all be all of communication, that we want to like see the person. We want to be
You
in
know
their,
what else people are seeking? They're craving is objects,
yes,
like tangible objects.
mhm,
I hate those. What was it called? NFTs?
yes, yes,
Those, oh God, no, there's nothing worse to me. People are craving real, tangible objects, just the feel of just standing in the presence of a painting, even if you're not touching it, it's just different.
it's
And just
absolutely,
like the kids today are going back to vinyl, even
yeah,
some people are going back to those little cassettes
yeah,
that we
yeah,
used in the 80s. And this is all, I think, extremely relevant to our question today, what it means to be a
yeah.
successful artist today.
Exactly, exactly. I know a couple of young women um, who they attend Sarah Lawrence College, which is very close to where I live, and they're like 20 and 21 years old. And they know I'm an artist, and one of the girls is taking art classes. So we talk about like what is she learning? What does she want to learn? And neither one of them are on Instagram. They hate social media. They have said flat out, they said, it's just too much, it's not authentic. I don't care. It's wasting my time. I mean, these are young women, young people who are social media is like they both said to me if there was a more specific place where they knew they could go, that it was only that and not all this other stuff going on, that they would be open to that. But they are looking for more um, authentic, real interaction with other people. And I thought that was very interesting. In
Yeah,
fact,
I've had students like that. Yeah.
they just even like this the whole I mean they use their cell phones for like to read stuff, but
Mhm.
using it as a communication tool as much as as much as I do
Yeah.
actually. you
Yeah.
know
I love that.
so that's
Very
that's a
happy to
very
hear that.
interesting thing, very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But I think listen, I think that this is an ongoing conversation because things keep changing all the time. See, that's the problem, is that maybe it's not a problem, maybe it's just more of a way to give us more opportunities to get creative in how we think about how do we how do we look at success, how do we define it for ourselves, and how do we keep an eye on all the things that are changing
Hmm.
that would maybe lend themselves to how we redefine who we are. The thing is, redefining who we are as artists. I mean, if you know who you are, you know who you are. Like you know who you are, and you know what kind of artist you are, right? So it's not so much like that one has to redefine oneself as an artist because you know yourself.
Yeah.
How you redefine yourself within the larger context of the world, whatever world you want to be in. And
Right.
I think that that's where we need to rethink things. I think that's where we need to talk to other artists. And I find that when other artists are in this sort of like intellectual space, that they're teachers, because we have to be able to do that, think about ideas and stuff, that those discussions I think are can be very valuable, you
Hmm.
know, because I think we just because of the nature of our work as teachers, we have to think critically and
Hmm.
develop
Hmm.
ideas and see where they can go and be open to different ways of thinking. That's really like important. I think, that's one of the reasons why I mean, I have to work, but I have to keep teaching. I,
Yeah.
I find that the collaborative thinking is very, very vital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I know, I hear you. I want to go back and stress that point because it's so, so relevant. I mean, I have a friend who we've been getting together for, 25 years and just complaining about, as everybody does, we do such great work and we do this and that and the other. We don't have, what the conventional model tells us we need to be successful. Okay. But every time we come around, like, what are we talking about? We have everything that's important to us, you
Right.
know? But my point is that it's the nature of the human mind to keep falling back to models that exist, right? But we're lazy. I mean, I want to, think about other things in my daily life. So I just, it's almost automatic that I make this assumption that hierarchy that existed when I graduated from undergrad in 1992 is the same now, you know? And so I have to actually work at reminding myself every day, no, no, are you kidding? And if you don't like that model, do something else. Create a
Right.
different one. And that's what started me on the whole DIY thing. Well, I have the means now, so come on, rent a big room in Soho and have a show for a weekend, right?
Right, exactly. I certainly think that the ability we have many opportunities now to create our own our own spaces and
Yes.
sort of and reinvent the perception
Yes.
of what
Yes.
artists can do now.
Yes. And
And
who we are. That's right.
about perception, I just have this is a funny story, but something I think that um, I remember this, I'll never forget it, and I have recounted this story to my students over the years. When I was in art school in the mid 70s, mid to late 70s, we had a lot of visiting artists come in and do talks. Like a lot of them. We had Philip Guston, we had like I mean at the time like the big guys, the big people,
Yeah.
the noteworthy people. And
And they
so
were probably all guys.
not all, some
Okay.
mostly guys, but not all. So one day, um, we were going to have Alice Neal come and give a talk. Now, remember that then the only way that we absorbed art, anything, art history, or what was going on in the contemporary art world was through reading art magazines, Art Forum, Art News, da 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 da, whatever. No internet, obviously. So and we knew Alice Neal's work. Most of us knew her work, right? So the day that she came to give her talk, I was helping some of the other students set up the slide projector, because we're going to show slides and she was going to do a talk. So we're back in the back of the auditorium, setting up the slides and the projector and everything. And I turned to somebody and I said, "Is she here yet?" Alice Neal. I was like, and everybody's, I don't know. So I looked over to the stage, like at the front of the hall, this old lady that wore like a house coat dress like my grandmother would wear. And she was talking to the director of the painting department, the chair of the painting department. I thought to myself, who is that? Because nobody actually, I had never seen a picture of Alice Neal herself. I knew her work. That
Yeah.
was, we read about it in magazines and saw reproductions of her work. Um, Keep in mind the time frame here, mid to late 70s. So she still hadn't had a major retrospective
Oh.
at that time. It was just getting her work was just getting really like more noted,
Mhm.
by the museums. But I looked over to one of my friends. I said, is it possible that that's Alice Neal? And he's like, no, that can't be her. Anyway, the start of the talk, in fact, was she was introduced. That was Alice Neal. And I was like flabbergasted. Oh, that's her? She doesn't even look like an artist.
Ha ha ha.
You know what that means, right?
Right.
She doesn't look like an artist. But the minute she opened her mouth, the minute she started talking about her work, and she was so simple in her language and down to earth and not full of art speak and all that other
Mm.
bullshit that you hear some people spew. Wow. That was it. I was like,
That's what I want.
that's an artist. That is an
Yeah.
artist. How
Yeah.
she described her work and the motivation behind her work and the kinds of relationships that were important to her in her life and the pivotal moments in her life that defined her vision, her artistic vision. She knew exactly what she was doing. And it was unlike anybody else. She was so authentically her, whatever she was, wearing that house coat dress. And I thought, oh man, this is it. She knows something that I want to know. You
Yeah.
know, as a young person to see that left a very strong impression on me.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
She didn't look like she could have just been walking down the street going to the
It
supermarket
was like
and
Agnes Martin, you know?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
So,
You go ahead. I
no,
want you to
no,
finish. Yeah.
no.
Oh, I was just going to say, you mentioned art magazines, how, everybody used to read them when I was an undergrad, I mean, even then I was a little bit cynical about them. But do you read them now?
Not as much. No, I don't. I
And
don't read.
what do you go to them for?
Just to sort of see who is the latest flavor of the month or the year, just out of curiosity,
Hmm.
knowing that that's going to change. It's not, it's not certainly not it's not anything that I would put in the same context of like art history, where you looking at a historical overview of like
Right.
a period of time in painting or something. It's just what's happening now.
Hmm.
And um, I got tired of reading art magazine writing a long time ago because I
Hmm.
never thought it was very good, you know. Um, and now, I mean, I think hyperallergic is good. I think that I do read that, and that's probably the one that I most go to. But I don't read the art magazines like I used to because
Yeah.
I feel like can get my information from other sources.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I too pretty much abandoned art criticism, the way that it's written, about like in art forum, places like that, even Art in America. I mean, very reputable places, must reads when I was an undergrad. Anyway, I am a big fan of pointing my students away from all of that, away, get out of the art world. I'm a big fan of giving my students books like, do you know Lewis Hyde?
Yes, I know who that is.
Lewis Hyde, The Gift, that would be one of them. Like, that's a classic to give to artists. Because he's talking about art within the framework of just humanity, how it serves humanity, how human beings have approached it through the millennia. So I am all about that broader picture myself and kind of defining success within that context. Am I contributing in however small a way to the human being?
I find what I find useful that I direct my students to, and I myself really like, I always get something out of it. Outside of like reading uh, books on, certain period in history, then how that period might relate to whatever the development of art was at the time. Those kinds of readings I think are important. But I find that books like Ninth Street Women, which is all about the women abex with painters
Yeah.
throughout that period of time and how they were associated to the men who became very well known, but their careers were secondary and sometimes tertiary to the men. And those stories about how those women uh, continued on with their work, the challenges that they had, and then achieving late life notoriety later in life. Um, I find that kind of writing in the sort of biographical form, instructive and inspiring. But I also like to instruct my students to go to and find videos of people like Lee Krasner being interviewed, Philip Guston being interviewed, Alice Neal being interviewed. Some of some of the artists that we know now, and particularly the women who achieved, again, their exposure increased that the older they got. When you listen to these people
Yeah.
as human beings,
Hmm.
not just as artists,
Hmm.
that is that's I think that's just that reveals so much because any of these people, again, their authenticity and who they are, how they express themselves. There's no, like the particular people that I mentioned, Agnes Martin, another one. There's no BS. There's no facade that they're trying to present. It's just who they are, how they speak, how they articulate their thoughts. Very, very like down to earth, very like, yet sometimes they're talking about very lofty ideas, but the way they deliver the message is very unpretentious language. And
Yes.
there's a great deal to learn from that, again, as not just artists, but within the artist, within the human experience. Like, who is that artist as a human being? You know,
Yeah.
and hearing it right from them is,
Hmm.
I think, extremely inspiring, instructive, and just great. Just really, really great.
Hmm. Hmm.
I love that stuff. I think
Yeah.
it's very, it's very grounding,
Yeah.
like within your own like soul. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
like they know how to live. They understand life, and they know who they are as artists within that bigger context. I think it's really quite
It's
good.
it's a beautiful thing. I love that too. I love reading that. Noguchi is one of my favorites. He didn't
Yes.
write his own, he didn't write an autobiography, but there's a wonderful biography of him, and he's a big hero of mine.
Yeah.
But I think what we're coming down to, because we're kind of wrapping things up, I think, is really number one, okay, if you want to think about what success means to you today, think about what's important to you, why you got into this in the first place, right? Really go, but take that to heart. Take that
Right.
to heart. Sure, we've all been distracted and tempted by all these other, by the conventional model. Sure, sure, especially I think as younger artists. But then also, broaden it out further still is, perhaps we can think of art as one particular way of living a human life. And I would say living a really, really rich and passionate and rewarding life. And so many people don't have that.
Right.
Even if you never make any money off your art, I mean, if you can experience this joy and this passion every day, I mean, that's a real gift when you look around and see how other people's lives are.
Yeah, certainly, making art and and thinking about it and understanding it, it really is its own life force. I
Yeah.
mean, when we're open to the process and we're really like in that flow of creativity and making whatever it is, that is its own life force. And I think for artists, it's a means of survival as a human being. Like, if we don't have that, what other outlet can we possibly have?
Yeah.
Because that not having an outlet for that kind of energy, creative energy, can be very, very unhealthy, and just the thought of it is like really depressing.
Yeah.
um, we're lucky that as artists that we have the ability and the opportunity and the inclination to make art and have the creative outlet be something beautiful and accessible to us, regardless of the external success, milestones, or external recognition or whatever. That we have that ability to do that, and I do think it helps our spirits survive. It
Yes,
really.
I completely agree. I agree absolutely. And live like the way that you want young artists today, to come up and say, that's what I want.
Well, I think making, I mean, I think any creative impulse
Yes.
is rooted in wanting, I mean, it's not the only thing, but it's rooted in trying to find something out, to discover,
Hmm.
like something that maybe never existed before or you never thought of, looking at the world differently. That's all that until you kind of go down that path, it's all rather mysterious and unknown until you have to sort of have the courage to like go there, like, oh,
Yeah.
like I want to find out more about that. Why do I see that the way I see it? Or why am I interpreting what I'm seeing in this way? Those questions may never be fully answered absolutely, which is I think why we keep on making art.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can kind of like figure it out, like, oh, okay, wait a minute. And throughout our lives, how we see the world, how we think about the world keeps changing. So that is an ever evolving phenomenon of the discovery of the unknown, I think.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Just that energy of, searching and searching and searching, and that it is. I've never felt so alive as when I have that intensity, of the search,
Yep.
um, regardless of whether or not I'm arriving at answers.
Yeah, it really is. It's within the process, and whatever we end up with as a product, as the result of that, I think sometimes for me is like almost secondary. It's
Yeah.
like what did I learn from all of this? Like
Yeah.
did I think of that I hadn't thought of before? And I think that is where the vitality and the sort of the life force is. And then the byproduct, whatever it is in the end, is like sort of symbolic of that whole journey, right?
Right. And then whenever you look at the piece, the end product, you will
Absolutely.
relive that. And I argue that others who you might encounter your work, let's say 100 years after you die, if you're lucky, they might get something of that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One would hope. One would hope.
So to be able to transmit that experience through your work, through this very silent and mysterious medium that we work in, I think is huge, really profound.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I agree. I agree.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Anna, and I can't thank you enough. I just want to throw in that I think the very fact that you and I really wanted to do this conversation, look, we're not being paid for it. We're not, we didn't get anything material out of it, but that's who we are as artists. That
Yes.
is success for us. That's something that we really value, just engaging in these conversations and, you know, bouncing ideas off of each other and but creating something together that neither one of us alone could.
Absolutely. I think again, the value of collaborative thought does really, it's not a competitive thing, it's collaboration, which it really can create a movement within a culture.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's very exciting. And I think we need to do more of that with one another, with other people. Absolutely.
Yes. Agreed. So I hope to have you here again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.